So I'm Joyce. Welcome to Feeling Your Feelings. I'm the head of production for creative experiences at Facebook.
And I'm Sue Anderson. I'm the group creative director on the Facebook app at CreativeX as well. And I'm kind of going to be Joyce's feelings guinea pig for the day.
So we thought before we got started, we could tell you a little bit about why we're talking to you guys about feeling your feelings. In addition to being head of production at Creative Experiences for Facebook, I also, for the last almost 2 years, have been teaching a course at Facebook called Conscious Leadership. So Conscious Leadership is based on a book and also a management philosophy called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. I've taken about 8 days of coaching training to be able to facilitate this course at Facebook. And in January of 2020, I've been accepted as one of 20 coaches that's going to take a year-long certification program with the 2 authors, Jim Detmer and Diana Chapman.
It's kind of a big deal.
Currently at Facebook, we have almost 100 people that are enrolled or have already taken this course with us, which takes about 8 months. And the most popular class in this course is called Feeling Your Feelings, which is based on one of the chapters. So we're so excited to bring you guys an overview of this chapter today. So the first thing we want you guys to know is that feelings actually make you better at your job. Feelings are the oldest form of human intelligence, and yet so many people dismiss it because they think that feelings make you a worse leader somehow, that it makes you not strong, that you don't have rational decision-making abilities, that your decision-making is clouded by things that don't matter, emotions. So we're here to tell you that feelings are actually so important to leaders to be able to make clear decisions. And if you can harness your emotions in a really healthy way, it can be so wonderful for your organizations. Conscious leaders know that managing energy is the most important thing, and that emotions are actually energy in motion. So what we're going to cover today is how you can learn to experience your emotions fully, even at the workplace, release them completely, and then learn from the wisdom of those emotions really quickly.
So we're actually going to learn how to process your emotions in 90 seconds. So many of us in the advertising industry are used to doing everything in 30. We're going to give you a whole 90 to do it. Then we're also going to teach you how to match your expression with your emotion. And that type's so small, I'm losing track here. You going back? And then we're also going to teach you how to actually take those feelings and learn how to use them as a leader.
And this triple benefit can really transform leaders and organizations because what it does is it unblocks energy between people and teams, and then it allows the intelligence of our emotions to really serve their purpose instead of being repressed or recycled. So why is it so important for us to release feelings, and why does that even matter in the workplace? And that's because we believe that feelings are meant to be released, not repressed or recycled, and that most of us were taught at some point in our lives that some feelings are not okay to show other people, whether it's anger, sadness, or fear. For some reason, we have learned, whether it's culture or in our families, that this can be perceived as negative or taboo for some reason.
Yeah, I was saying to Joyce, I come from an Anglo-Saxon family where, it's sort of the part English, part German, everything's always got to be okay. You've always got to say, I'm fine. And if you do complain, then you have to follow up very quickly with, but I can't complain. That's sort of the way you've got to do it. Expressing your feelings is seen as kind of gauche. But the problem with keeping them all in is that they sit there and they stagnate.
Yeah, I mean, as we have all grown older, we learn that repressing feelings is some form of survival, that it's going to get us more security or more control or more approval from other people. And that's where we learn to suppress and deny those feelings. So just asking a question with this audience here today, how many of you have suppressed or repressed a feeling in the last couple days? Great. Perfect. Glad you're all here. If you repress and recycle emotions, it blocks energy, and that then hardens into a mood. When this happens, moods can last for days, they can last for weeks, they can last for years.
Like, I keep on giving the example of my mom who got mad about something at Christmas 15 years ago. And guess what? It's Christmas time. And guess what we're leading into? Some more of that repressed feeling where my dear mother is going to be showing just little bits of her feelings, but not all of them. And we could just be moving on. We could just get a really good Christmas present that would need no anger.
So this is a perfect example of Sue's mom starts annoyed. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't process it. Then she's agitated. And maybe this Christmas is the one where she'll blow her top and become enraged.
I've decided not to go home for this Christmas.
But we've all seen this, especially in family dynamics where there's the most amount of repression going on, that everything seems fine until it's not because somebody explodes. And conscious leaders know that repressing, denying, and recycling feelings actually create deep, first physical, it happens in your physical body, physical problems, then psychological problems, and then relational problems with other people. So conscious leaders know how to check their bodies, how to match their experience to their emotions, to check their bodies, and go back and forth until these feelings are processed. And releasing energy doesn't have to look anything like an emotional outburst. Sadness does not need to look like tears unless you want it to. Anger doesn't have to be some kind of emotional outburst where you throw a table over. Sounds like somebody's done that. Once processed.
Many of us have thought about it, at least.
If you can process your feelings, it moves you, it shifts you from a place of being a victim of that feeling and what triggered that feeling to actually having a sense of empowerment over what you're going to do with the wisdom of that feeling. So today we're going to explain the 5 core emotions, and we'll do a deep dive on each one. And just like colors, there are a ton of emotions that you can experience, but we believe that they're rooted back in 5 core emotions. And everything outside of these 5 emotions is sort of thought-based and can come back to these 5. So if we know how to identify and express these 5 core emotions all the way through to completion, that's how we develop emotional intelligence. The 5 are anger, fear, sadness, joy, and creative energy, which is a really interesting one that we'll dive into. And we really want to emphasize that emotions show up in your body first. And this is something that a lot of us probably don't even acknowledge on a day-to-day basis. We spend so much time in our heads in front of our computers that we have somehow come to believe that being a great leader or doing well at work is all in the thinking mind. We don't believe that's true at all. We believe that great leaders operate also from their heart center and their emotional intuition and knowledge. So that's why it's so important to understand where your feelings show up in your body so that you can start to connect your heart with your brain and develop that sense of coherence. So
it's almost one of the perils of being a headstrong human being is that your head can actually take over everything and can start to tell you all of the things that you need to be doing. And we have to find that connection between the head and the heart and give the heart a minute to actually have its say too.
So I don't even need to read these because you guys know all of this intuitively, but you know when that feeling right behind your eyes, when you start to feel that pressure in your throat, in your high chest, that's sadness. And that's really important to pay attention to when it shows up in your body and not just to shove it back down and move on with your day because you're afraid to show it or because you think there are negative connotations with showing it. So we're going to do a little exercise all together as a room just to see how we can process feelings in 90 seconds or less by being able to locate it, breathe through it, and then match your emotion to your experience. So I would love for everybody to just think about one example in the last week where some feeling came up and it caused you to suffer, whatever it was that you didn't feel like you could express. So once you have that, the first thing that we're going to do to be able to process this in 90 seconds is we're going to breathe, which is so obvious and straightforward. But breathing just helps to regulate our nervous systems. So think of that feeling that you have, and we do 4x4 breathing. So we go in for 4, and out for 4, and in for 4, and out for 4. Already, that feeling that you have is starting to come down a little bit. It's not controlling you, right? So now, where's the sensation in your body? Is it in your jaw a little bit? Are your shoulders hurting? Are there knots in your back? Think about where it's showing up in your body and how you're feeling it. The next thing is to allow the emotion to be there. Simply by asking yourself, can I allow sadness to show up in my body right now? You're doing the opposite of resisting and repressing. You're allowing that emotion to be the energy that is moving through you rather than stopping. So if you're open to it, you can also ask yourself, can I accept the sadness? Can I appreciate that the sadness is here? Just sitting with that thought starts to shift things, starts to move things a little bit in your body. And the last thing you're going to do is match your experience with your expression, which is something that babies and animals know how to do really well. They don't hold on to shit. They just let it go. You know how they're feeling.
That's why babies are so admirable. When you see them throwing a tantrum in the airport, lying on the floor, stomping their hands and feet, like, damn, at least they're letting it go. Whereas we all just walk around muttering and mumbling and just being generally annoyed. It's a very admirable thing.
Yeah, and that's why dogs are so happy, because they're not holding a grudge against you.
They express their joy radically as well. Yeah. We'll teach you about that in a bit.
So, just as an example, how might someone match their expression to their emotions, Sue?
You're going to make me do this now. So when you started to talk about the feelings that we're feeling today, I was feeling it very much in my stomach as I'm sitting in front of a whole bunch of people coming from a family that doesn't talk about their feelings, and I'm going to talk about my feelings to all of you. So I'm feeling fear. There's real fear there. This is nerve-wracking.
So how might you make a sound that matches that emotion?
I think it's like a squeaky door kind of sound. It's like a and it tapers away and then comes back for another little I think that's it.
So maybe on the count of three, on three, if you guys want to just make a sound that matches that feeling that you're thinking of. 1, 2, 3. Woo! All right. So now
that'd be more angry sounds, actually.
Now we know how to breathe through it, look for the sensation in your body, allow, accept, or even appreciate that sensation, and then match the experience with the expression. Conscious leaders know how to use these 4 steps over and over again, and to know that just because you process something doesn't mean it's not coming back, or coming back stronger, or coming back in a different way. Emotions are waves, and that's just how it is. So when you process it, you're left in calmness with the wisdom of that emotion, and then it might show up again, and then you just do it again. So now for my favorite part, where we get to deep dive into the intelligence of our feelings. So we'll talk about each of these feelings, and then we're going to invite somebody up afterwards to maybe process their feelings with us. So we know that all 3 centers of intelligence, the head, the heart, and the gut, which is the thinking mind, the feeling self, and then the instinctive center, are all tremendously helpful to leaders. And the wisdom of the heart center is that of emotional intelligence. So it's essential to great leadership, but it usually goes untapped. So what exactly is emotional wisdom? What are our emotions trying to tell us? Let's start with talking about anger. So conscious anger doesn't look like an outburst. It actually empowers people to say no, or to pull out this imaginary sword and to be able to cut and destroy. And I don't mean that literally like cut and destroy people, but
I always imagine Uma Thurman in a yellow tracksuit going for it in Kill Bill.
But that's exactly what it does.
But it kind of is like that, right?
This rush of like this white hot anger that you might feel is flooding you with like adrenaline, because there is something that needs to be done with an open heart in service to the greatest good. That's what conscious anger looks like. Unconscious anger looks like blame, righteousness, criticism of other people, and usually has some of those negative connotations that all of us have experienced of what anger can look or feel like when it's not so conscious. So I would love to hear just a story about when you became Uma Thurman.
So There was an incident where I was on set in Prague shooting something. We were about to shoot the next day. And we'd been working with a director who was particularly difficult. He was withholding a lot of information from us, kind of kept on saying, I've got this, I know how to do this, I've done it before. His producer kept on telling us how many Cannes Lions he had won as a producer. And we kept on feeling like we were heading for a really toxic shoot because we didn't have a good understanding of what it was that he was doing, and he wasn't answering any of the things that we felt like we needed to know. I was also working with a producer and a partner who I'd worked with a million times, and both of them were starting to really feel the pressure of these, of him not giving us what we needed. And so the night before the shoot, when we asked one final time if we could have the shooting boards, which is not an unreasonable request the day before a shoot, I don't think, they came into the hotel lobby that we were in and very grumpily said, well, what is it? Why is it that you need these things? We said we thought it was not an unreasonable request. And then he said to me, I've worked with the chief creative officer of Saatchi & Saatchi, and he's never asked me for a shooting board before. And my producer has won all of these Lions, and he doesn't understand why you need it. And at that moment, I felt this incredible anger and got really, really rattled. I was like, okay, that's enough. Because not only was he upsetting my team, but he was not giving me what I needed. And I raised my voice. I said, that is enough. I need you to know that we all have a collective experience. We've all done this before. We need these things from you, and it's not a tough ask. And we headed into a much more pleasant shoot, knowing that we'd got rid of that, and we each got to say what we needed to say. I got a shooting board, and we shot what we needed to shoot. But I was angry.
And also, anybody who knows or works with Sue knows how terrifying that could be, because she never raises her voice, and she doesn't get mad very often.
I went full yellow tracksuit.
So when anger shows up, especially when it's not something that's common, it is such a powerful tool to get people to listen and to move things in the direction that you want. Great leaders know that sometimes you have to eradicate behaviors, patterns, even people that aren't serving the team, or old ways of working that aren't serving the work. And being able to process this feeling of anger comes across as no, or I'm going to cut and destroy until we move towards the thing that we all need to get to. And this is the intelligence of anger. So next is fear. And fear is the body's way of saying, wake up, you're about to walk headfirst into traffic. Conscious fear invites us to be present. It's saying, pay attention. There is something new to be learned right now, and it's really important that you be present and learn whatever it is that's causing you to feel this swirling in your stomach. I think unconscious fear is an imaginary toxic state of something that hasn't happened yet that you're worried about will happen. It's like having a big meal and then going to bed at night and worrying, like, well, what am I going to eat tomorrow? It's living in an imaginary future state and not being connected to the present.
I think probably one of the best examples I have of this is I was working at Crispin Porter in LA. There's probably people in the audience who are going to relate to this story. We had Microsoft as a client, and things weren't good with them. And I was waking up in the middle of the night, and I was sweating. I've always wanted to do that. I wanted to tell a whole room full of people about sweating in the middle of the night, but that's the truth. That's what was happening. That fear was coming out because I was so worried about what was going to happen. I've come from a generation of you must have a job, and everyone must have a job. And we needed to be able to, we need to get a handle on this thing. And it was manifesting itself as a physical state. And what happened was the agency actually got asked to pitch on another piece of business. And all of the officers were asked to pitch. And I raised my hand and I said, my team will do it. And it was kind of insane because we were already staying up for 24 hours every day trying to hang on to the thing that we were terrified of losing. And when I told my team that we were going to pitch, they were actually really mad at me as well. Like, what do you mean we're also going to do a pitch? But one of the things that I've learned, and we actually have this poster up at Facebook, is the best way to complain is to make something. And us going and working on something else and purposely stepping into the fear actually changed the dynamic of that terrible fear that we had on that Microsoft account. And it completely changed the energy of the whole agency for that moment in time. So sometimes you've got to just really lean into that fear, I guess.
I think what's so beautiful about that example is that you shifted from a state of toxic fear where you were imagining that everything would go
Sweating
wrong.
in my jammies.
Sweating in your jammies. And then somehow you were able to listen to that fear and access a higher level of intuition, even if you didn't know for sure you were going to lose that account, that your intuition was telling you this could be potentially very bad.
Yeah.
And so what can I do and can I do something new because my fear is inviting me to pay attention to potentially move my team in another direction so that we will be okay if this really terrible thing that my intuition is telling me is probably going to happen, happens. So leaders who can't access fear are actually really dangerous to themselves and their teams because they're like teenagers who don't have past experiences or don't care about those past experiences to pay attention enough to pay attention to what their fear is inviting them to know to take care of the next step.
It's kind of like being in a scary movie and just ignoring the thing that's coming for you. You have to deal with it. You know?
Those people do not feel fear in those movies
exactly.
until it happens.
There's a man behind you.
The next feeling is sadness. And sadness is really the energy of loss. So it's usually telling you that something needs to be moved on from, something needs to be let go of, and it doesn't mean you need to quit your job. It just might mean the way you thought things were going to work out is changing, and that's okay. Sadness, I think people have a negative connotation with because it's rooted in this unconscious sadness, which is a state of suffering that, oh, poor me, I'm a victim. Everything is happening to me, and it feels like you're just this heavy weight at the bottom of the ocean. Conscious sadness doesn't have to feel like that type of suffering at all. It just has to be about processing what it is that you want to let go of or move on from.
So here the example that comes to mind, and Joyce, you were with me, and there's, again, people in the audience that are going to relate. When I first joined Facebook, I actually joined a team because I really loved that the creative leader, Scott Tratner, was leading a team. I loved what the team was doing at the time. And shortly after I joined, Scott decided that he was going to move on, and then shortly after he left, we had a massive reorganization, which meant that that team actually completely shifted around. And my immediate feeling at that time was, my God, I just packed up my life from sunny LA to come to foggy San Francisco. This thing that I wanted to be a part of no longer exists. This isn't fair. And then on top of it, I was kind of charged with making sure that the team all sort of regathered themselves and moved on. And I found myself coming to work every day feeling a genuine sadness that this thing that I wanted to be a part of just it wasn't there anymore. And I made a very conscious decision after going to work sad day after day after day that it's actually not worthwhile spending that amount of time feeling really sad. You're spending a lot of time at work. And started to think about, well, what if I hang on to some of the things that I really liked about the team that I wanted to join? What if I take some of the few things that I learned from Scott at the time and I move those forward, but I actually just genuinely say goodbye to something this thing that no longer exists? And I suddenly found it much easier to move on and to actually start to build something new by processing that sadness.
And that's a shift move from unconscious sadness, woe is me, I'm the victim of this reorg, I'm the victim that Scott left, to moving to a conscious state of sadness where I recognize that the old way of the team is not going to work anymore. How can I shift from victim to creator? How can I go from feeling like everything's happening to me to maybe using some of the fear that also might be arising, that what are we going to do without Scott? And then picking a few things that he taught you or that you thought he did well so that you could lead the team forward into the unknown future. So I think that's such a good example of shifting from unconscious to conscious sadness.
Yeah, because otherwise you're just going to be miserable all of the time, and you have to. Nobody wants to carry that amount of misery. I also think it's really important to let the people you know that you're working with know that you're sad about it, because we also all work with really smart people, and pretending that everything is okay is actually a worse thing to do.
It is worse because leaders who can't access their sadness or let it flow, they can't connect with other people at the heart level, which is essential to being a heart-centered leader. And so many times people think, if I'm a leader, I have to act like everything's fine, nothing bothers me, I'm this fortress that nothing can break through. And that actually, we've all felt that. We've all seen leaders like that. It drives a wedge between the leader and everybody else that's feeling that sadness or that fear.
So sometimes you actually have to wear your heart on your sleeve, and it's okay.
Yeah, and as a leader, what a powerful thing. If you process your sadness in front of everyone, then you're almost giving them permission to process theirs as well. And then you're moving that sadness, this energy and motion through yourself and through an entire body of people. It could be 10, it could be 100, it could be 500. And that's how you can step into your power as a leader and use that sadness to help the entire team. So this is one of my favorite ones, which is joy. Most people are like, why would I suppress joy? Joy feels great. Like, I don't have any problems here. And what we see so much in this class at Facebook is that tons of people actually suppress their joy all the time, and they have no idea that they're doing it.
I actually think the way that our industry is structured purposely prevents joy all of the time, because we have these ideals of, winning awards, or, getting to, I'm going to publish this book, I'm going to make this film, I'm going to win this Cannes Lion, or whatever it is. And so what we do all the time is that we constantly shut down joy. So you write a script and you go, well, this is a really great script and I'm really excited about it, but I'm not going to celebrate now because I first have to see if I can sell it. And then you get to selling it and you go, well, I could get excited and I could celebrate it, but now I have to find a decent director to do it, and there probably won't be enough money, and so you shut down that joy. And then you get somebody great to shoot and you go, well, the editor's probably going to screw it up, so I'm going to just shut down that joy. And then you get a really great edit and you show it to everyone, you're like, somebody's going to tell me I have to change something. And so you keep on shutting it down every step of the way because you're so busy worrying about getting it to this one particular goal that we define as success. And so I think our industry actually purposely shuts it down. I've worked with a director who said what he started to do was, when his rep called him to say somebody wanted him to treat on something, he would drink champagne. Because somebody thought of him out of all of the other directors in the world to treat on something. And then once he'd sent in his treatment and he was really happy with it, he drank champagne. And then if he got on the phone, because people liked his treatment enough to talk to him about it, he drank champagne. And so he carried on going. The man wasn't a drunk, he was a really good director. But he took the time to celebrate every single one of those moments. And, I think particularly in industry that is very creative, we don't stop to go, oh my God, I woke up this morning and I wrote something that is clever and smart. Or today I did a deck that had some really smart solutions in it. We don't stop and actually enjoy what it is that we do and celebrate that thing at that particular time.
And that's the difference between unconscious joy and conscious joy, because unconscious joy is tethered to external circumstances. It's a circumstantial happiness. If I win an award, then I'll celebrate this spot. If the CMO likes my deck, then I'll celebrate all of the work that I put into it. When actually conscious joy is connected to a deep internal sense of well-being. It's something needs to be appreciated, celebrated, or recognized, including ourselves. So how much time do we actually spend in our working hours celebrating what we get paid to do every day? I don't know if I put as much time and intention towards that as I should, and we're denying ourselves joy. So
it's the easiest one to do. It's the easiest one to express, but somehow it lands up being one of the ones that we shut down the most.
leaders who can't experience joy are really dangerous because they can't adequately celebrate and appreciate themselves or others, and then they can't cultivate a culture of appreciation, and that is really sad.
You know, recently, the last big pitch that I did, I actually chose to. Normally what you do is you do the pitch, right? And then once it's done, you send a mail to everyone saying it was really great, except if it's not really great, then you write a kind of awkward mail saying, we did our best. And what I decided to do with the last big pitch is I actually decided to celebrate before we went into the pitch. And I woke up in the morning and wrote a mail to the whole team because I was really, really, really proud of the work that we were going to show that day. And if nobody liked it, I actually didn't give a shit because it was really great work. And we made an enormous amount of effort to get it there. We worked really well as a team. And stopping and actually celebrating at that moment was a whole new lesson for me. But doing it ahead of time, that's okay too. Feel it at that moment. Because the truth is, somebody probably will screw it up for you at some stage.
The last feeling is creative energy. So creative energy is kind of an interesting one to try to explain, but it is the feeling of collaboration, innovation, something new wants to be born. I think that actually one example I have of creative energy is in the first months that I worked with Sue, we were oftentimes on the same page about many things, and we would see the same types of work and get excited by that work. And the only way I can explain creative energy is that moment where you lock eyes and you're both like, yes, that's good.
That's it.
And that's so important to creative cultures. How do we cultivate that? How do we not block it? And it's so important for leaders who demand innovation and demand creativity to also be able to access that and let it flow within themselves.
It's kind of the old put the oxygen mask on yourself first. I think it's really important that you constantly, I always talk about filling the well, that you have to be filling the well with your own inspiration and creative energy because you can't give it out if you don't have it. So that's the first thing. And there have been instances, and Joyce, I know you do this too, where I've actually said, okay, I'm out. I have to step away for a little bit just to go and put some new things in my brain in order to be able to give it away. And sometimes that's walking out the building. Sometimes that's taking a couple of days just to go and wander around a museum, go to a city that inspires you, just to be able to give something else out. But it's super important that you start with yourself because then you have something to bring to the happy, creative energy ricochet party.
We are running out of time, so I'm just going to spend a very quick minute talking about unconscious creative energy, which I'm so immature, I laugh every time. But it's like, it can often be mistaken for sexual lust. So we see this in highly creative companies or highly creative environments where people are hooking up all over the place because they're just, I mean, sometimes it's a lifelong partnership in marriage, and that's wonderful.
I married my art director.
Perfect example of an ongoing lifetime collaboration of creative energy. But I mean, for myself, an example of unconscious creative energy is when I read like an amazing treatment and I'm like, I love this treatment. This director's incredible. I love this director. And I show up on set and I have like the biggest set crush on the director. But like, does that mean I should go hook up with the director who has a wife and children? Absolutely not.
We've all seen people do it.
But what my creative energy is telling me to do is like feel alive, feel awake, because that creativity is like oxygen to me, and that we can bounce that energy back and forth, and a wonderful project or collaboration idea can be born from that free flow of creative energy from one person to the other. So we're going to do a really quick audience volunteer to see if anybody wants to come up and just try to process their feelings in 90 seconds with us.
Come on, I can't be the only guinea pig here. Someone? Yes. Come along.
We won't torture you for too long.
Okay, good.
Hi.
Hi.
What is your name?
Thank you.
Kate.
Hi, Kate.
Hi.
So, we're just going to have you think about a feeling that you're having that might be repressed or recycling in you right now, and try to locate it and where it might be in your body.
Frustration.
So frustration is actually a thought, but it's not one of the 5 core emotions.
Oh, one of the 5. Okay. Joy.
Joy?
Along with frustration. Yeah, joy.
Joy and frustration. Where is the joy showing up in your body?
I think I feel it a lot in my stomach. Yeah. Sometimes it's nervous energy, but I realize it's because it's for a positive thing, not a negative thing.
I love that.
Yeah.
Can you do some 4x4 breathing just to
See if you can
Sit with
locate it.
Yeah, it's there.
Can you allow or accept that it's there? This joy mixed with fear.
Yeah.
Are you appreciating it right now?
Yes.
Feels like you are, yeah.
Yes.
And then can you match your expression to your emotion?
I'm a natural smiler, so I think that sometimes that just happens, but sometimes I feel joy like all throughout my body. Like I'll just kind of buzz a little bit. So I feel a little buzzy right now, and also I'm in front of about 200 people. So.
I just told them I sweated in my pajamas.
There you go.
So what's like a buzzy sound you could make? Great.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how this will lend itself, but this is a really easy framework that anybody can do. Should you decide to externalize this processing after 90 seconds and you want to share it with someone, because oftentimes processing with somebody else is really helpful, you can use a framework where you tell them the facts, your feeling, and the story. So separating facts from stories is super important because it invites a conversation with someone else around what's actually going on. As an example, I could say to Sue, the specific facts are, when you were late to breakfast 3 times in a row, I felt angry because I made up a story that you don't respect my time and you don't care about this presentation. So that would be a really good way to talk to somebody about your
I
feelings.
was on time for breakfast, for the record.
I was late.
This is an example. But it's a really helpful tool to be able to separate what's the emotion from the facts, because we mix the two things up a lot. And separating the two things out means you can identify what you're actually feeling and then figure out how you're going to move on from it, rather than getting it mixed up with what's
It also invites a candid conversation because you're not accusing them of making you angry. You're saying the facts, what a video camera could record, they were late, caused a feeling, which is an inarguable truth. No one will ever tell you you can't feel angry or you can't feel sad. And then the story is the part you guys can discuss, because if she supports the story, she can say, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to make you feel that way. And if she doesn't support the story, she could say, well, let me help you identify a new story, which is, what if I was actually doing this to help you? Or what if I have so much respect for you that I was rehearsing in my room and I was late because of that? You know? It just helps to open up the conversation. Do you feel like this is something that you would use with your joy feeling right now, or it doesn't apply?
Who am I having that conversation with? Myself?
Well, I guess it depends on is the feeling in relation to someone in particular, or is it just how you feel in this moment?
I just feel like it in this moment. I feel really lucky to be here. Yeah.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Of course.
So, I mean, now that we know the wisdom of the emotions, and joy is usually telling us it's being connected to a deep state of internal well-being, something needs to be celebrated, recognized, appreciated. What do you think your joy's telling you to do?
Maybe share my experience more. I'm in a role where I talk a lot about difficult things. I think sometimes it's better to talk about positive things as well.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
beautiful.
That's right.
That's so great.
Solution,
Yeah.
moving forward.
Trying. Baby
That's
steps.
awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So once we get the hang of starting to process our emotions like this in 90 seconds or less, and actually letting that energy be in motion, there are actually scientific benefits to what this can do for your body and your mind. So there's a book called Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza, where they talk about when you can feel your feelings, you're creating coherence between your heart and your emotional center and your brain and your thinking center. And what that can do is it can lower your blood pressure, balance your hormones, improve like lots of functions. Mentally, it can help you have more clarity. It can help you prevent, like it can be stress prevention. Basically, studies are showing that feelings don't cloud decision-making, which is the bias that we all have about feelings in the workplace. They actually promote better decision-making because they're providing you with mental clarity. When you can access your heart center and start to trust your emotions, you're actually able to make better and more clear decisions that can serve you and your team.
I mean, being able to feel better and respond to your own emotional well-being, it seems like a no-brainer. So hopefully we can start to build a style of leadership across all of the companies that we're all in that balances out that heart and the head, so that we can all move on to actually being healthier and use that energy to move us to a place where we can be better leaders as well.
And that's because heart-centered leadership, it allows us to lead with joy, with unity, with love, with selflessness, and with acceptance. So imagine what all of our organizations could look like if we just listened to the wisdom of our emotions. Thank you for being here. I know we're over time.